A political realignment, often called a critical election, critical realignment, or realigning election, in the academic fields of political science and political history, is a set of sharp changes in party ideology, issues, party leaders, regional and demographic bases of power of political parties, and the structure or rules of the political system, such as voter eligibility or financing. The changes result in a new political power structure that lasts for decades, replacing an older dominant coalition. Scholars frequently invoke the concept in American elections and occasionally those of other countries. American examples include the 1896 United States presidential election, when the issues of the American Civil War political system were replaced with those of the populist and progressive era, and the 1932 United States presidential election, when the populist and progressive eras were replaced by the New Deal issues of New Deal liberalism and modern conservatism. Realigning elections typically separate party systems, with 1828, for example, separating the first party system and the second party system in the U.S. It is generally accepted that the United States has had 5 distinct party systems, each featuring 2 major parties attracting a consistent political coalition and following a consistent party ideology, separated by 4 realignments. Political realignments can be sudden original hypothesis. It is a single critical election that marks a realignment. By contrast, a gradual process is called a secular realignment. Political scientists and historians often disagree about which elections are realignments and what defines a realignment, and even whether realignments occur. The terms themselves are somewhat arbitrary, however, and usage among political scientists and historians does vary. In the U.S., Walter Dean Burnham argued for a 30 to 38-year cycle of realignments. Many of the elections often included in the Burnham 38-year cycle are considered realigning for different reasons. Other political scientists and quantitative elections analysts reject realignment theory altogether, arguing that there are no long-term patterns. Political scientist David R. Mayhew states, electoral politics is to an important degree just one thing after another. Elections and their underlying causes are not usefully sortable into generation-long spans. It is a Rip Van Winkle view of democracy that voters come awake only once in a generation. It is too slippery, too binary, too apocalyptic, and it has come to be too much of a dead end. Sean Trend, senior elections analyst at Real Clear Politics, who argues against realignment theory and the emerging democratic majority thesis proposed by journalist John Judice and political scientist Ray Teixeira in his 2012 book The Lost Majority, states, almost none of the theories propounded by realignment theorists has endured the test of time. It turns out that finding a realigning election is a lot like finding an image of Jesus in a grilled cheese sandwich. If you stay long enough and hard enough, you will eventually find what you are looking for. In August 2013, Trend observed that U.S. presidential election results from 1880 through 2012 form a 0.96 correlation with the expected sets of outcomes in the binomial distribution of a fair coin flip experiment. In May 2015, statistician and 538 editor-in-chief Nate Silver argued against a blue wall electoral college advantage for the Democratic Party in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. And in post-election analysis, Silver cited Trend in noting that there are few if any permanent majorities, and both Silver and Trend argued that the emerging Democratic majority thesis led most news coverage and commentary preceding the election to overstate Hillary Clinton's chances of being elected. The central holding of realignment theory, first developed in the political scientist V. O. Kijer's 1955 article, A Theory of Critical Elections, is that American elections, parties and policy-making routinely shift in swift, dramatic sweeps. Key, E. Scatcheneder, James L. Sundquist, Walter Dean Burnham are generally credited with developing and refining the theory of realignment, though they differed on some of the details. Earlier realignment scholars generally concluded that systematic patterns are identifiable in American national elections such that cycles occur on a regular schedule, once every 36 years or so. This period of roughly 30 years fits with the notion that these cycles are closely linked to generational change. Some, such as Schaeffer and Reichle, argue that the patterns are longer, closer to 50 to 60 years in duration, noting the Democratic dominance from 1800 to 1860, and Republican rule from 1860 to 1932. Reichle argues that the only true realigning elections occurred in 1800, 1860, and 1932, given the much longer length of time since the last generally accepted realignment in 1932.